side. We're going to start with our tennis ball, and the intention behind this exercise is to help you get some more movements in the joints underneath your feet. So this isn't a massage, this is simply just us getting some more movement underneath our feet. So we are going to open up the joints under your feet by placing the ball in different places and putting your weight into the ball. So I want to get it into all of the weird and wonderful places underneath my feet. I'm going to put my weight into it and allow myself to simply relax over top of the ball. So I'm going on the outside face of my feet. I'm going under the different parts of the balls of my feet. And I'm putting the weight into different places, allowing myself to open up those joints. And what this does is, if our feet are not used to making different weird and wonderful shapes, this will allow us an opportunity in a safe space to make those shapes. Now, the second one that I want to do is to be able to get some length into the structures underneath my big toe. So I'm going to go up against the wall here. I'll just shift over. I'm going to go up against the wall with a wedge, and you can use the corner of a room. Like here we have the corner of the room. You can use that as well. Everyone has a corner of the room, I hope. And I'm going to use the wedge just to demonstrate that. So I'm going to take my big toe, I'm going to place it up against the wedge, or it would be against the corner of the wall. And I'm going to let all of my other toes relax down onto the other side. And what I want to do here is just relax, let those toes relax, and I'm going to bend my knee and bring my weight in towards the wall. And what this will do is we'll stretch out all of those tissues underneath here to give them the experience that they need. And then I'm going to do the opposite, and I'll demonstrate using the wall. I'm going to let my big toe relax down onto the floor and all my other toes up on the wall, and the same thing. I'm going to bend into that shape. Allow especially the tissues underneath your big toe to relax as you get some length into the other structures in the other part of your foot. Now, the next one that I want to do, I am going to be using my elastic band. So what I want to be able to do for a bunion is also be able to lift the big toe up off the ground while I keep the ball of the toe down on the ground. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to demonstrate this just with one foot, but you can do with both of them. So you're going to stand up. And then what I want you to do is to lift all your toes up off the ground. And your big toe on the other foot is going to help you with getting that big toe to lift up off the ground. And so here, what we want to do is teach your big toe some new party tricks, being able to keep the ball of the big toe down on the ground as you lift it up, not scrunched in towards the other toe, but being able to give it an experience to get some more length here right after that stretch you did against the wall. And then the third thing that we want to do is, for bunions, we often have all of our weight dumped onto the inside of our foot. And so we want to be able to find a way to get the weight off of the inside of your big toe. So I invite you to stand and just see if you can find out where the pressures are underneath your foot. If you have a bunion, typically we have a lot of the pressure on the inside face of the foot and not on the outside face of the foot or towards the heel. So we want to get used to redistributing our weight away from having it all on our big toe to being able to get it to come back to the outside of our foot and towards our heel. And that will take the pressure off the big toe and that joint and be able to redistribute it more evenly throughout your foot. Now that was all of the things for bunions. We're going to now move on to the plantar fasciitis issues. So the first one that I want to do is to be able to get some length underneath there, because if we get length, it teaches the tissues to then get shorter afterwards. So what I want to do is take my towels. You're going to roll it up. You're going to place your toes on one of the towels and your heel on the other towel. And what we're going to do is we're going to lengthen out all that tissue underneath so that it's equally lengthened out throughout your foot. And what we want to do here is you're going to bend your knee and take your weight, about 95% of your weight over top of that foot. And we want to fully relax that foot as we come forward. For many of us, we're not used to relaxing that foot. We're going to let all the tissues relax. You'll see them all drop down to the ground as we give them some space to drop down into because they're propped up with those towels. And so we want to be able to get some more length in that plantar fascia. The second one is that often we think about the plantar fascia going front and back, but it actually also is influenced by this sort of towel ringing pattern that we need to bring back to our feet. So what I want to do is take the towels into a new position here. And I want to take the towel at the back and just place it on the inside, the outside of the heel. And the one at the front, I'm going to place under the big toe so that we're getting some opposition happening between our heel and the front of our foot. And we're going to do the same motion we just did of bringing your weight forward and getting that towel twist kind of idea underneath your foot to be able to give the plantar fascia some new experience in that, it's called the frontal plane, the side to side plane, and give it the new experience that it needs. Now, the next thing that we need to be able to do for our plantar fasciitis is be able to lift your arches up off the ground. And so we're going to do this by changing the pressures underneath our feet, but also doing a little bit of help with our big toe. We find that most people tend to have their big toe lift off the ground when it should actually be staying on the ground. So I'm going to use my anatomy in motion wedge, but you can use your towel again. I'm going to give a little bit of a prompt to stay with the wedge or the towel to get some opposition with my big toe as I teach my arches to lift up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift my weight in this direction, and I'm going to rotate my body in this direction. And what that should do is it should lift my arches up off the ground. And if you find that you're just flopping over like this, that's why the towel or the wedge is there to help create a situation where we can shorten your plantar fascia and lift all your arches up to give them a break, to give your plantar fascia a break. And be able to give a new experience to your foot that it tends to be, for most of us, locked in a position where everything is flat down to the ground. Now, the last one that we want to do is be able to move the attachment points at the back of your heel. So I'm going to invite you to put your towel or your wedge on the inside of your heel and do that movement that we just did. So I want to be able to have that towel stretch, that wringing out at the back of my heel so that my heel can make this shape. It can roll to the outside. Getting used to moving the attachment points of your plantar fascia. So we want to do it in that direction, straightening your knee and rotating in that direction. And then we want to do the opposite, where I'm going to bend my knee and allow my heel to roll to the inside. So as I bend my knee, I'm going to let my heel roll this way, also giving a new experience to the attachment points of your plantar fascia. Now, the next piece I'm going to work on is your hammer toes. So our hammer toes are created by a whole bunch of, it's a strategy that's created by a whole bunch of different things that are not happening in your body. So I'm going to give you some ways to stop yourself from creating the hammer toes. The first one, we're going to have a book. And instead of gripping the floor, I want to give your toes no choice but to relax down. So we're going to get you to put your toes off the end. So it's like the ball of your foot is staying on the book or whatever structure you're using and letting your toes drop off the end. We're going to do that same thing where I'm bending my knee and bringing my weight forward. I'm going to completely relax my foot and let my toes dangle off the end. Take away their strategy of gripping the floor. They can't grip anymore because they're dangling in the air. Something else is going to have to pick up that movement and do the exercise for them. Now, the next one is, again, to be able to not have your toes gripping the floor for stability, but to do the opposite that they're actually meant to do. So when we did that exercise of lifting your arches off the ground, we want to, instead of lifting your arches by scrunching your foot up like this, we actually want this arch to rise with this guy down on the ground. So we're going to reverse that experience of, instead of scrunching to create an arch, we're going to change this relationship here to bring the point of contact down on the ground and create an arch where it belongs. So what I'm going to do here is, again, I want to be able to lift my toes off the ground as I'm lifting my arches. So I'm going to either put a wedge or a towel underneath here, or you can put a towel under all of your toes to show them that when the ball of the foot is down on the ground and I lift my arches, the arch begins here, not at the tip of the toes. So we're going to rotate, shift our weight and rotate in that direction. And as our arches lift, we're going to learn to put the ball of the foot on the ground instead of the toes gripping the ground to keep you stable. And that's going to redistribute so that the hammer toes aren't your strategy anymore for being stable. In the same thought process, if we're not used to having our tripod on the outside of our feet, so under the ball of the big toe and little toe, we need to bring that strategy back. So I'm going to encourage, just like we did with the putting the towel at the front and the back for your plantar fasciitis and for your bunions, we want to bring a space where we can get the tripod back, so we have an experience that this is where the tripod is, not in the toes. So we're again going to do our exercise where we're bending our knee into that space and being used to having the ball of the foot be your tripod rather than the tips of your toes, as well as rotating and having the ball of the foot as the location of your tripod instead of the tips of your toes. The last thing we want to do with hammer toes is we don't want to be gripping the floor when we're pushing our body forward. So often I will see that people will be scrunching their feet up as they're trying to push themselves forward. And again, we're not getting the tripod on the ground where we want it to be. So what I want you to do is, having this as the back leg, we want to push off the back leg without scrunching our toes up. So we don't want to scrunch our toes up as we're pushing. So I want you to allow your body to come forward and not grip with your toes. Allow your toes to completely relax as you push off with the ball of your foot. And just see if you can let those toes relax, send them a signal, relax. And allow the toes to be relaxed as you push off at the back. So those were our hammer toes ideas. Now we're going to do flat feet next. And some of these will be similar to the exercises I gave for other things. But for this one, what we want to do is, again, we want to lift our arches up off the ground. So if you have flat feet, they have not learned how to come up against gravity to get off the ground. So we want to teach your body to lift the arches back up. One of the great ways to do that is to give your body something here to start the arch. There's an arch here and there's an arch here. So let's give it a space where it can start the arch from. So we've done this exercise before. We're going to shift our body weight in that direction and rotate and allow our arches to lift back up using the wedge or the towel as a pivot point from which to build your arches back up. And so being able to get those arches back will help with your flat feet.